To touch on that real quick, I think we can get to Binance from there because something that happened during the FTX debacle is, yeah, Sam Bankman-Fried was donating to both parties across the aisle, and he had also promised up to, I think, $1 billion, which was reported in the headlines for the 2024 election. So this guy was a major player in Washington, and basically everybody had taken money from him. Okay, so when FTX blew up, there were a lot of very powerful people that had a lot of egg on their face, and that's never a good thing. Now, if you remember, the way this blew up was on Twitter. And where do the political elite hang out? They hang out on Twitter. So this happened in the public square in full view in front of everybody. And the perception was, whether this was right or wrong, the perception was that CZ Binance, okay, took Sam Bankman-Fried out in the middle of the street and shot him in the head. That's what everybody saw on Twitter. That's what people in Washington saw. And when you do something like that, you paint an extremely large target on your back. And there had been investigations into CZ Binance from U.S. regulators beforehand, but now it was like, the game is on. We are coming for this guy. We're going to get this guy.
I'll just tell you, I do not think these cases would have been filed if they would have gotten a bill through Congress, some sort of crypto omnibus bill. And as HODL knows, I've been saying this for months, that I think that the green light to file these litigations, which just so happened to coincide with the collapse of FTX and a lot of upset investors and a lot of politicians who had egg on their face through associations with FTX and with SBF, they said, okay, we need to do something now. You regulators go take care of it. We're going to do what's best as politicians, pretend like we're doing something and not actually do anything, right? That's the genesis of it, because there was real optimism from the more pro-crypto lawyers and more pro-crypto lobbyists in the space that we could really get something done in 2022, that SBF was throwing money through lobbyists to try to manipulate the Congress into doing something. And there were a lot of very positive pro-crypto bills that had support, bipartisan support, among Republicans and Democrats. But again, once it all blew up, I think that all fizzled and they said, okay, take the gloves off, go get them, SEC, CFTC, DOJ. So the mechanics are different, right? There are, depending on which asset you're talking about, there's different mechanisms and vehicles through which they can do it. But overall, I think the SEC's issue is this: the very activity of doing the back end, right, staking it yourself through chain. They're saying that the customers are relying on you to do that technical part of it, and that then Coinbase is taking a commission on that. As alleged in the SEC complaint, it's somewhere between 25 to 35%. So you wouldn't even get the same amount, a commensurate amount, if you were doing it natively on yourself, right? They're skimming off the top. So that's a concern, right? You built a business model off of being a middleman and doing the hard part for them, and then taking a portion of that and refunding it back. But the other problem from the SEC standpoint, if you read the complaint, is that they're saying, well, you're putting this out into the marketplace and you're encouraging people to stake your assets there. And in many cases, they're offering yields higher than they would natively on chain. How does that work, right? Like that's an interesting little wrinkle in it. If it's not the same as if you were to go out and do it on your own, through some back end, maybe pooling of assets or issuing loans, somehow they're monetizing that beyond what the native protocol yield would be. And they're taking a commission out.
Well, no, they are rehypothecating in the Ethereum ecosystem. So the minute you stake your ETH, you get a proxy token. You don't get one, but you have to go to the market to get one. A proxy token called staked ETH. So if you can prove that you've staked your ETH, you get a proxy token called ST ETH. And so basically, they just immediately rehypothecated all of the staked ETH, and it's a massive problem in Ethereum. If the ST ETH peg ever unwinds, it's a catastrophe essentially.
And stuff that's not coming out of the protocol. That's the point. There are bonuses for their staking program as well. They're contributing additional crypto from God knows where into the stake services to make it more attractive for customers. It says they offer staked bonuses to participants during special periods. For example, there's a quote from June 2022: stake at least $100 to earn a $10 bonus. We'll deposit $10 in ETH to your account within 45 days. That's it. You don't have to do anything else. That's from a promotional period, promotional item on Coinbase's website. But keep in mind that's in this suit. I mean, they list numerous assets. Okay, forget the earn program, forget the staking program.
Yeah.
In this particular suit, they list numerous assets they believe are in fact unregistered securities and Coinbase is selling them. So that's part of the suit. That's the first category we were talking about. And then they have even a broader category, which is, okay, let's assume that just one of these things is in fact a security. You have to register in the United States as an exchange. And that falls within our jurisdiction as the SEC, and you never did that. You never properly registered it as an exchange. So, right, it's a massive complaint. When we I think I was on the Bitcoin Layer talking with Dr. Jeff Ross about this, and you could have filed a complaint like you're suggesting, where it's very narrow. It's just going after the staking, or just going after a few tokens, or just going after a certain small amount of their business. This is the whole gamut, right? They filed a complaint literally questioning their right to exist as an exchange. It could not get more broad than this. The only way I think you could tailor a more broad complaint is if you added in every token on the platform that could even potentially be a security.
And just to clarify, it seems to me that it's not necessarily an attack on proof of stake, but it's an attack on delegated proof of stake. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Right. And also, I think, Preston, when you go back to the initial ICO for Ethereum, it's my belief, Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but that it falls outside the statute of limitations.
Right.
And so
it is.
probably,
I mean,
yeah, the SEC will probably not be going after them, right, for the original ICO launch of Ethereum. But I do think ETH2, is there something there? Could they go after them for the transition to proof of stake? That's an interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's the question. I mean, so one of the emails that we got, it was kind of fascinating. I tweeted it out. It talked about how their current understanding of how Ethereum is presently constituted back in 2018, they didn't think it was a security, right? Based on our current understanding of how this thing is constructed. They're commenting in all those emails, and Director Hidman is opining on proof of work Ethereum, right? It's changed radically. And then the question becomes, well, why did it change? Who is leading the change? Does someone control the change? And that's where you have potentially securities laws get involved. And if folks that were leading the change and were, cultivating that upgrade, and they still to this day maintain that, and it doesn't work without the man behind the curtain making it work, that raises issues. And I think that's why they've tried to leave the door somewhat open. You've noted, like in public statements, Gary Gensler has been far more reluctant than some of his predecessors to speak on the legal status of Ethereum today as presently constituted. That is, in my opinion, intentional.
I just wanted to jump in here and tell you about this new valuable resource that we created for you. The biggest challenge to taking control of your personal finances, improving your investment returns, and building a better future is just getting started. This means getting organized, having a plan, and being disciplined. As Mark Twain once said, the secret to getting ahead is getting started. If you're not satisfied with where you're at financially, whether that be not having enough savings at the end of each month, watching your cash being eroded away by inflation, or maybe you're not sure where to get started with investing, down in the description below, we put together a free guide for you called The 4 Simple Steps to Take Control of Your Personal Finances and Life. You can get this free guide by clicking the link in the description below.
Yeah, so this is the blockbuster of the week, right? If there's one story in the legal crypto world and the market world as a whole, and we need to get to maybe some of the market effect with CZ having to defend the BNB token. We'll talk about that in a moment. But so the one story is this issue with Binance, right? Okay, so when you normally file a lawsuit, guys, you file the complaint, you walk up, or actually you don't walk up to the courthouse anymore. You just file it online. You get the stamp, and then you go work and serve the defendant. And the whole process at the get-go is very slow moving. It can take months before you even get service on the defendant. And then after you get service, it can take months before the defendant even appears, and they may file a motion to dismiss, and that might get briefed. I mean, I've had cases where my clients have been sued, and the case doesn't even get moving for a year after the suit is filed. Literally 1 year after it's filed, we finally start getting into discovery and moving. This is the exact opposite. This is rocket docket. They filed the complaint, and within days, they had a TRO on file, which is an order. It's seeking immediate relief from the court, basically saying you need to act right now because Americans' deposits in Binance are at risk. We are nervous that the control of Binance US is really under the control of a foreign national in CZ, who has openly flouted U.S. jurisdiction, who has used it as his piggy bank, move funds in and out of the United States, who has basically retained control over all of the assets. There's allegations in this 1,000-page submission that was put forward with tons of citations and documents that show, CZ had most of the shards, or access to most of the shards, for all the crypto assets held by Binance US. He was a signatory on tons of accounts belonging to Binance US. And even though openly he's saying, no, we don't have any control, it's an independent exchange that has no association with the broader Binance.com, they put forward compelling evidence, which the judge even cited, saying there's a lot of evidence here that they put forward showing that there was substantial control by the international of the domestic. In particular, one thing I'll just highlight is that they actually showed almost $1 billion flowing out of the United States from certain accounts that were supposedly belonging to Binance US in March and April. What happened in March and April? Obviously, there was that banking issues, and there's allegations about signature in here and some other U.S. banking institutions. So a lot of stuff there that needs to be figured out. So the SEC files this emergency relief. They say we need to be heard immediately in court. We need to safeguard U.S. deposits. We need a full accounting. We need to freeze all of Binance's assets. We need to have a receiver in there to look at things, to know if the data we're being given about what assets are held and the balances of certain accounts is in fact true. And we need to do it now. So they filed this. It was presented yesterday before the judge. Binance did the smart thing. They conceded a lot, saying, like, we'll agree to make sure this is all in the hands of U.S. persons. We'll agree that we're going to have an accounting at some point of all the U.S.-based entities. But they fought on what they needed to fight on. So what do you think they needed to fight on? They don't want any of CZ's personal assets froze, and they don't want the international frozen. Those are the key issues that they fought on vigorously, and it was smart, right? So it all resolved yesterday with the judge saying, well, look, you guys agree on a lot. There's some issues that need to be carved out and resolved. I'm going to refer you to a magistrate judge, which is also a federal court judge, but someone who is not appointed in the same stature as the district court judge, and they can go handle this discovery dispute and try to come back and come up with some agreed order, rather than the judge throwing down an order to freeze all these things and to handle this. Let's just see if you can agree through a mediation to some consent decree, some consent order to safeguard assets. So that's where it stands.
How much time did they give them for that?
48 hours. So the consensus view, I think, right now, and I don't know if this is your two views, but the consensus view is that you're sort of in the late stages of the bear market here. You're building a base in Bitcoin, and we're going to be heading much higher over probably the next year. Beyond that, after the halving, if you believe cycle theory, that sort of thing. I don't, but let's put that aside. Let's just assume we're nearing the end of a bear market or longer consolidation. And I don't think these cases are going to resolve at any point in the near future. I think it will carry over into 2024, potentially into 2025 and thereafter. Do you think this changes the dynamics of the altcoin Bitcoin market? Are we going to get another Bitcoin bull market where you have the alts popping off again and you attract capital and dump money into the alts? I know that we have a friend, obviously Brad Mills, who talks about very, very vocal. He's been saying for like the better part of 2 years that he thinks there will never be another altcoin bubble, that it's dead. I've heard you, HODL, say things that you think there's going to be an AI altcoin bubble or identity altcoin bubble.
Identity, yeah.
Identity, that's right. What do you think? Do you think that this is meaningful, all this legal, BS, or where do you see it?
Well, I thought about this quite a bit, actually, when these actions started coming down. And I think that, unfortunately, my take on this is that there will be an alt season. It will exist largely outside of America, largely outside of developed markets, right? So, I mean, Andreessen Horowitz announced that they're moving some operations to London. London is another financial hub in the world that's, part of the developed world. But I think, unfortunately, a lot of the people that are going to be getting fleeced in this next cycle are in the global south. And, that makes me really sad, because I'm already starting to see American investors operate out of these Caribbean entities so that they can take part in these kinds of things, basically unencumbered. So, yeah, I think, unfortunately, you're going to end up in this situation where, like, much of the world is still hooked on these decentralized Ponzi schemes, and there's not a whole hell of a lot that we can do about it. So I do believe that you're going to see these things pump yet again. Now, there's going to be some energy where inside of America, at least, some of the people that are smart, sober, and rational will wise up, and they will either leave the space or they will double down and refocus efforts on being Bitcoin only. And you're already seeing a lot of the people that, I consider to be more fly by night moving from crypto into the new trendy stuff like AI, right? You can take a GPU farm that you were using to mine cryptocurrency and you can use it to do AI stuff. So it's a real easy phase shift for these guys. I think that we're going to get rid of a lot of the bad elements, but I think unfortunately the bad elements are going to go overseas and they're going to prey on, the underbanked in emerging markets. And that's going to be like a moral tragedy. And I will continue to speak up against it every time I see it because I don't think it's right. And if you're an investor, I think that that's something that, should weigh on your conscience and you should actually give heavy consideration to.
Fed funds is supposed to be at around 2.25 by the end of the year. And the question is, do we get there? Do they just do 25 from here on out, which would put it around 2? 2% Fed funds in this economy is still a substantial drag just because of the leverage in the system. So for me, I don't think anything's going to stop until it gets much, much worse. But to Jeff's point, the reason I tend to favor him is because I think on this call here is because I just don't think you're going to see consistent selling across the board in this market. I mean, you always see these bear market rallies.